This dog has a pumpkin-sized head, but you won't recognize him today. Welcome back, Charlie here. You're about to see the most amazing animal rescues. First, we have to look at this homeless dog with a pumpkin head. In 2022, a woman saw this dog walking around the streets of Houston, Texas. The dog's head was massive and swollen. The weight of his head was so bad, his entire head was dragging down. The dog was clearly homeless, but no one was stopping to help. He'd been hiding in an abandoned apartment building, and only coming out in the daytime to scavenge for food. Thankfully, the woman who found him called rescuers. The dog was too scared to go into their cage, so they had to trick him to get him in. Once they did, they took him to an animal hospital. He clearly needed urgent treatment. The dog looked so sad as he'd been neglected for so long. He had no hope anyone would ever care of him. And remember, this dog is still a puppy. He was only 10 months old at the time. But how did his head grow like this? Well, it turned out someone wrapped a shoestring around his neck, maybe as a collar, but as he grew, the shoestring stayed on his neck, causing his neck not to grow. To make matters worse, doctors found 26 bullet shrapnels in his leg, but despite all this, he survived months out on the street. This dog had an incredibly tough life, but thankfully was rescued by Houston K911. He was at the hospital recovering for 1 month, but after that time he was taken to a loving home, and over time realized he was finally safe. He now lives a happy life in a home with other dogs. The dog's new owner named him Gus, and he now visits kids at schools. They learn about Gus's amazing story. Gus is only one dog, but there are thousands of homeless dogs out there living horrible lives. Hopefully one day they can all be saved and adopted like Gus. Next, we have to look at this rich turtle. This may look like any other turtle. This sea turtle goes by the nickname Bank. The reason why is because it swallowed nearly 900 coins. The coins weighed 11 pounds. The turtle had been living in a zoo, but over the years, humans had thrown coins into his pond. Bank had ended up eating these, and over the years, they'd formed a mass inside him. Things got really bad one day when this mass cracked his shell. A nearby doctor in Bangkok, Thailand operated on this turtle. Amazingly, they were able to remove all of the coins, giving Bank the opportunity to swim around and eat happily. But here's where things get sad. Bank later had to have another surgery. And sadly, in this surgery, she passed away from complications. Hopefully this story makes everyone think twice before throwing coins in ponds. You never know what animals might eat them. Next, we have to look at this dog named Jackson. It's hard to believe some people could be cruel enough to hurt a dog, but surprisingly, it does happen. One day, Hayden Howard from Indiana saw strange marks on her dog. At first, she thought it was nothing. Her dog, an English Mastiff called Jackson, often plays outside. So at first, she assumed they were simply insect bites. But just in case, she decided to take Jackson to the vet. But when the vet shaved Jackson and looked at his body, he burst into tears. It turned out Jackson's body was full of metal pellets. So the markings weren't insects, but bullets. These pellets were all over the dog's body. One was even near Jackson's eye, meaning it's a miracle he's not blind. In total, the vet removed 27 pellets from Jackson's body. Thankfully, Jackson had not been shot with a real weapon. Instead, it was likely a pellet shotgun. But Jackson still experienced a lot of pain. Police eventually took over this case. Moving on, let's look at this amazing deer rescue. This deer had a box on his head. He couldn't see anything, and assumed he was being stalked by a predator. But it turned out to be a man saving his life. Now let's look at this dog named Boonrod. Oil rigs are one of the most isolated places in the world. So how on earth did a dog get stuck on this oil rig? Oil rig workers were stunned when they saw a dog clinging on for dear life. The oil rig was around 140 miles off the coast of Thailand. Workers immediately stopped everything they were doing to save this dog. The dog was wet, exhausted, and very thirsty. The dog was quickly put on an oil tanker and taken back to land. But how did this dog even get to the oil rig in the first place? Well, it's believed he may have been swept out to sea. The dog had no other choice but to keep on swimming, and eventually came across this oil rig. The oil rig workers named this dog Boonrod. That's a Thai word which means survivor. And amazingly, one of the oil rig workers even adopted this dog. Not only was it saved, it now has a loving home to go back to. Next, let's look at this raccoon that got stuck in a net. This young raccoon got scared by some fireworks and ended up falling into a basketball net. It was very scared and suspicious of humans, but thankfully rescuers saved this raccoon. The raccoon was totally fine and ran off to its mother. Moving along, let's look at this tiger named Asha. When this Bengal tiger was 9 months old, it looked like this. It was the size of a 3-month-old cub. Asha had wounds and parasites all over her body and was also incredibly malnourished. She also shared a cage with another tiger who would often bite her. Asha belonged to a traveling circus, and this circus did not treat her well at all. Activists saved her from the circus and took her to a vet where she was treated. She was then taken to a wildlife reserve where she was given a big, spacious cage. After a few years, Asha made a full recovery. Today she's happy and healthy, and also lives with a fellow tiger. But because of her childhood, Asha is still 2 to 3 times smaller than most tigers her age. Next, let's look at this dog stuck in a plastic pipe. A man and his son were scootering on a road in India. That's when they heard what sounded like puppy cries. They saw a pipe with a hole in it and soon realized there was a puppy inside. The man was able to push the dog towards the hole, while his son took the dog out of the pipe. The man and his son then took the dog away on their bike, giving him a very caring home. Next, we have to look at this hungry fox. This fox was terrified to approach people, but it was freezing cold one day in Russia, and this fox had no other choice. Despite how scared the fox was, the dog approached this man. But all the man had was a Snickers bar. The man gave the fox his only food, and amazingly the fox actually took the chocolate bar and walked away. This woman was walking around in the snow, but that's when she saw a strange looking creature. She soon realized it was a skunk with a jar stuck to its head. This skunk was trying to get some food but ended up getting stuck. The skunk must have been terrified, but thankfully this woman saved the day. If she hadn't have removed this jar, the skunk would have passed away. That's because there was no way it could eat or drink with a jar stuck to its head. An African safari was interrupted when a man noticed a zebra lying on the ground. At first, they feared it had been shot by poachers, but thankfully this zebra was simply dehydrated. The people offered their own water up to save this animal's life. Thankfully, the zebra made a full recovery. Now let's look at this freezing fox. This fox was freezing cold. It was stuck in an ice-cold canal for many days. But that's when a man came to the rescue and warmed it up using a blanket. These animal rescue stories truly are inspiring. It's inspiring all of these people went out of their way to save these animals' lives. I think this video really proves animals truly are a man's best friend. But now it's time for you to make your voice heard. Comment below which was the most touching animal rescue in this video. In my opinion, the dog rescued from an oil rig was the most exciting. If you want to see my short videos, then check out my second channel. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and if you haven't already, then what are you waiting for? Subscribe to Top 10s.